please make sure that if you have questions for us, you put them in the Q&A box. We will not be able to scroll through the long chat box to answer questions there. So Q&A box for questions, chat box for chatting. We look forward to starting very shortly. Hey everyone, if you are here for the Swing Left webinar with Andy Kim, you're in the right place. Apologies for the delay. We're going to get started in just a few moments. Thanks so much for joining us. Sit tight and we'll get started soon. Hello, everyone. All right. We are going to get started here this evening. We may have a brief interruption. We're trying to get ourselves up on Facebook and having some technical difficulty. So we're going to start right now for those of you who are here on the line, and then we may welcome some more folks from our Facebook audience shortly. So to introduce myself, I am Adrienne Lever. I'm the political director at Swing Left. For those of you who have never been on a webinar with us before, welcome. We're very excited to have you and to have this conversation with Andy Kim, one of our amazing candidates on the Swing Left slate of 78 districts across the country that we are working on to flip and make sure we take back a majority in the House in November. So before I talk any more, I'm going to pass it over to you, Andy. Do you want to say a quick hello to everyone on the line and maybe share a fun fact about yourself that folks may not know?
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me. Thanks to everybody for joining up. Look forward to being able to tell you what we're trying to do here in New Jersey. I guess in terms of a fun fact that people don't know, I'm a musician and a writer. In addition to the work that I did working in government as a diplomat, I've been spending a lot of my time writing a guitar album, 13 different songs, as well as both a fiction book and a nonfiction book. So these are ways I try to help me kind of exercise some muscles that I don't always get to do otherwise.
Awesome. I love that. What do you want to share what your fiction book is about?
Sure, still working on it, but look, it's a book about someone, an artist who's obsessed with this painting that he just finished. Obsessed with the idea of trying to paint something that's universally beautiful. It's something that I've been working on for a couple years now. Just need to kind of buckle down and get the last couple pages written, which maybe I'll get a chance to do after November 6th.
Oh my God, I love that. Well, I'm really looking forward to putting you in Congress and also reading your book after November 6th. So that's exciting. So before we continue, thank you for the intro. I just want to make sure everybody on the line knows that the schedule for this call, we're going to have a quick chat here, Andy and I, and talk a little bit about the election, the race in New Jersey 3, what it looks like, and some of the experiences that he has had along the way on the campaign trail. For those of you who are joining us on the webinar, you can type your questions into the Q&A box, and then we will be getting to questions and discussing them at the end of this call. We expect to be here with you for about 45 minutes or so. So looking forward to the conversation. Thanks to everybody on the line who's joined us directly and for your questions. We'll make sure to get to as many of them as we can before the end of the call. So with that, Andy, many of the folks here are probably invested in your district in New Jersey 3 and are looking at it closely, but others who are logging in and listening to this conversation may not be. So tell us a little bit more about New Jersey 3. What's the geography like? What are the major cities and towns that are a part of the district, and any other things that you think people who aren't as familiar with it should know?
Yeah, happy to talk about that. I mean, this district, New Jersey 3, is my home. It's where I grew up. It includes South and Central Jersey, just south of Trenton. Philadelphia suburbs stretches all the way from the Delaware River on the west, all the way to the Atlantic Ocean on the east, including towns like Brick and Toms River over on the Ocean County side, and then Willingboro, Marlton, Morristown, Mount Laurel, Mount Holly, all the way up to where I live up in Bordentown, close to Trenton. So that includes that's what the New Jersey Third is.
And what are the issues that are most important? I mean, there are obviously lots of issues that people are focused on nationally. Are there any issues in particular that are relevant to the folks in your district and that people are particularly paying attention to?
That's right. There are a number of issues, and a lot of them track with what people are concerned about on the national level. The issues I hear first and foremost are about healthcare, about making sure we can protect people's health care, making sure that actually the top issue I hear about on the campaign trail is the high cost of prescription drugs. So these are things that are concerned, especially because, my opponent, Tom McCarthy, he was the lead author of the Trump healthcare repeal. He's the one that came up with the idea of cutting pre-existing condition protections to get that bill passed. So that's something that's very personal to this district. It's very much invested in who we are. People are concerned about taxes. There's a lot of frustration over the tax law, especially about state and local tax deductions and the high property taxes that people here in New Jersey have. But there are other issues as well. For instance, this is a district that got crushed by Superstorm Sandy. This is a district that has felt the brunt of climate change, has the largest forest preserve in New Jersey. There's a lot of environmental issues and other issues that are at the top of the list of what's on people's minds.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that Swing Left works on is getting people energetic and heading out to the district to go knock on doors and talk to voters about these issues. One of the things that we hear most often is people say, I know how important it is to knock on doors and talk to voters, but I'm not a policy expert and I'm not prepared to have these conversations. What would you say to them when they're coming out into the 3rd District of New Jersey and going out to knock on doors and talk about, and especially if they're coming in from outside?
Well, this all comes down to that connection between people, and that's really what it is. I mean, all the money that you raise for campaigns and all the discussions about what the strongest message is, that doesn't mean anything if you aren't meeting people and connecting with them and energizing them, having a dialogue with them. That's why it's really important, and nothing connects with people more than people who are passionate about this country, this election, what's at stake here. Want to go face to face and explain to someone else why it's meaningful. I mean, here's what we tell them is that it's about connecting with people and having them realize that this is such an important race. This is the most important election that our district has ever been a part of. In New Jersey, we're not a swing state like usual on the presidential cycle. We're not used to being in the national spotlight here, but who wins and who controls Congress on November 6th could very well come down to who wins the New Jersey 3rd Congressional. And trying to explain that and have people understand that, have them recognize that their voice matters so much this year, more than many other times in terms of the influence that it can have. That's something that we need people to be able to help get that message across. My very first job in politics was as an organizer. I worked at the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless when I was a student out there. And so I cut my teeth on knocking doors and organizing people. And that's so important, which is why we are building the largest Get Out the Vote operation in South and Central Jersey history. We have over 1,200 volunteers already, but we need many, many more to be able to do what we need to be able to do.
That's absolutely, I agree completely. And having knocked on doors a lot in my life on campaigns, I can say that from my experience, people are often more empowered by our presence than we realize. So many voters across the country feel disenchanted with the political system and feel disconnected from it. And by going out there and having these conversations and showing them that we care, in and of itself, that knock on that door has a huge impact that is often hard to quantify. We have people who are coming in and supporting your race in lots of different ways, and we, of course, part of one of the pillars of Swing Left is grassroots fundraising, and so we have volunteers who are raising funds across the country, really, for the target races we're focused on. And I know that lots of people have questions about money in politics, and we all want to get money out of politics as best we can, but with the need to fight back the GOP this year, it would be helpful to hear from you. Why are these funds so important for your race, and what are you doing with the money? Where is it going, and how are you planning to use the grassroots funds that we're raising to support your race?
Yeah, so for me, I'll be very honest with you. I never thought that I'd run for Congress. I never did. But I also never thought that we'd be in this kind of situation as a country. And I have two baby boys, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So it's clearly a great time to run for Congress. But the reason why I'm doing this is because there's so much at stake here. We wanted to make sure that, my wife and I wanted to make sure that we did this true to who we are, that we can do it with integrity. And that's why the very first thing that we did, pretty much with this campaign, was to say we're not going to take corporate PAC money. That we're going to focus in on running a campaign that's focused on the people, and we want to run as strong of a campaign with that as possible. With that, we started with just me at my dining room table and a cell phone calling everybody I've ever met in my life. And, it was hard, as you can imagine. It's like a startup. You don't know where it's going to go, what's going to happen. But what I've seen over the last year has been nothing short of extraordinary. We have built one of the strongest campaigns in the country based and grounded in the people. Just in the last 3 months, for instance, we raised $1 million in the last 3 months from 30,000 contributions with an average donation of $34. I mean, that is unheard of. There was a record amount of money raised for this district in the history of this district. It really shows that, we're not just building a campaign here, we're building a movement. And what this money is allowing us to do is make sure that we can go toe-to-toe with my opponent. My opponent is someone who threw in millions of dollars of his own money before. He's a former insurance executive, went shopping for a district he could win, moved into our district 3 years ago, and now votes 94% in line with Trump in a district that voted for Obama twice, a district with 13,000 more Democrats registered than Republicans. What this is about making sure that our communities have a voice, making sure that we are engaged in this. And as much as I hate money in politics, what I always say, through my national security background, what we used to say out in Afghanistan and elsewhere is that you fight on the battlefield on which you're dropped. And I need your help, I need other people's help to make sure that we can go toe-to-toe with this person that can write himself a check. We've outraised him now 9 straight months, and we have over $700,000 more money in the bank than he does. But we know that he was hanging out with Vice President Pence the other day. He was the very first member of Congress to get a Trump fundraiser. These are the things that we're up against, and what we need to make sure that we have is we can get our message out. We have a great message, a strong message, and when people are reminded that he was the lead author of that Trump healthcare repeal, that have pre-existing conditions, we see how that changes people's minds. But we need to get that message out. Do that through TV, through field, through every other aspect of run the strategy that we need. That's why it's so important.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you talked a little bit about healthcare and how that's impacted your race. That's a huge part of your platform. Do you want to talk a little bit more about your stance on healthcare and why it's such a big part of your messaging this cycle?
Well, it's such a big part of what we're doing, in part because, it's just been such a huge part of my own life. My father grew up in an orphanage as a survivor of polio. My mother is a nurse. My dad went on to become a medical researcher. Dedicated, he grew up in an orphanage, and here in the United States was able to get an education, ended up getting a PhD in genetics, and dedicated his whole life to trying to cure cancer and Alzheimer's. So I've been, I've had my parents dedicating their lives to try to help people that have pre-existing conditions, try to help them in their time of greatest need. And now I'm a father of two baby boys, and my youngest baby, who was born last year, almost didn't make it. We had a lot of problems leading up to his birth, a lot of very difficult situations where we were worried about his health and worried whether or not he'd be able to make it, or if he'd have a problem that would afflict him for the rest of his life. And to go through that experience as a dad, as a son of a polio survivor, and then seeing my own representative be the one, not just a yes vote like 216 others, but actually wrote the bill. He's got his name on it. It's called the MacArthur Amendment, named after him, that gutted the pre-existing condition protections. That's big. And what I'll tell you is that as I've shared that story, as I talk about what healthcare means to my family, I've had hundreds of people, thousands of people across this district and frankly across the country share with me their stories. And many have similar stories, if not more tragic stories about this. And I can tell you that every single person I've talked to, either pre-existing condition or knows of a loved one or has a loved one that has a pre-existing condition. This is something that's the fundamental core of all of us. And we recognize now that healthcare is something that rich or poor people need to be able to have in order to be able to achieve the American dream. And that's why it's so important. Now, when we talk about that, when we talk about specifics like lower prescription drug costs, as I'm encountering so many people that are having their medication dosage or having to make the decision between paying for their prescription drugs or food or rent. These are not choices that people in the richest, most powerful country in the world should be making. And that's what we're fighting to change.
Yeah, that's such a powerful message, Andy, and it's one that I think really resonates across the aisle. As we're out there and we're talking to voters who are trying to make up their mind about which party they want to support in this election cycle, it's so important to remember that these issues really, they should be nonpartisan. And this is about justice and a right to health and prosperity, and it's something that we should aspire to as Americans. So it's beautiful to hear you share that message and your personal story. I was going to ask you what inspired you to run. The story you just gave may be the answer to that, but if there is something else, I'd love to hear it. This is such an interesting year. Everybody is feeling a high level of anxiety. We are looking at an administration that is doing things we never thought we would see in the American government, and we're also seeing candidates step up to the plate who've never run before in that environment. And curious to know if that affected your decision to run this year. Why this year, why now, and why Congress?
I've always lived a life of trying to serve this country. My parents taught me this line. My parents taught me so many lessons, but there's one that sticks out very poignantly, which is that they always had this line that said, service isn't just a job, it's a way of life. They wanted me to know that, what brings them to go to the hospital every day, that belief in service doesn't just end when they clock out at the end of the day. That's the level of connectedness and responsibility to each other that we need to embody always. For me, that channeled that through a career in public service. I've been serving my country as a national security expert, as a diplomat. I worked over in Afghanistan. I was over at the White House under Obama. I served under both Republicans and Democrats. I was not a political appointee. I was someone that was always trying to think about what I can do for this country. And that same belief is what drives me. And I'll be honest with you, I was in national security, and I always like to say that the last place that partisan politics belongs is in national security. I don't want people in the Situation Room or in the commander's office in Afghanistan thinking about how a decision is going to affect an election or something like that. So I very much approach this in terms of what's best for the country and where can I be of most impact to help in my country. And you're right, the story I shared about my baby boy, that was really it. That was what really connected to me is going through that experience in the hospital room, worried about my kid, and then seeing up on TV this effort that was trying to make it harder for millions of Americans to get health care, and then seeing my own representative up on TV talking about how he's leading that effort. And, I remember turning to my wife, and I told her that, if we get through this as a family, and if our kid is born and he is stable, I'm going to do everything I humanly can to hold that man accountable for what he did. Using our district and our name to push such dangerous legislation on this country. And thankfully, my kid was, born at a stable weight, and he's packing on the pounds. He's getting a bit fat now, which I'm happy about. But these are the things that that are seared into me as a public servant, as a father. I want to make sure that I can have the maximum impact to be able to fight for my kid's future, and that's what motivates me and drives me every single morning.
Well, you picked the right time. Your motivation obviously drives you, but there's also some interesting things to talk about in terms of the numbers. We have folks on Facebook Live who are now joining us, and many of the people who are watching from across the country may not know what the numbers look like in this district. So let's talk about that for a second. Tom MacArthur, as you said, won the district pretty squarely, but it also is a district where Obama won twice. And your resume makes you poised to win this district. The political climate seems to as well. But tell us a little bit more about what you're feeling on the ground and why you think we can flip this district this year. Why it makes sense for this to be a top target of our focus as we work to flip the House in November.
Sure. So here's what I'll say is that when I thought about doing this and talked to my wife about it, what we were saying is we're concerned about our country, concerned about what Tom MacArthur is doing, as I mentioned, the lead author of the healthcare repeal. But what we said to each other, we said we can't assume that someone else will stand up and fight on our behalf. If we have a problem with what's happening, if we want to see change, what are we going to do about it? And so you're right. Tom MacArthur won this re-election in 2016. But he won it because he ran against a Democratic challenger who only raised $600 and spent $0. In one of the most competitive districts in the entire country, the Democratic Party was not prepared to be able to put up a fight. And so as I see the problems happening, as I see what Tom MacArthur was doing, I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to find and have a campaign in this district that was going to be able to go up against him, hold him accountable, and give the people of this district, the community I grew up in, a real choice. And that's when we decided to launch this campaign. And this is a district, as I said, that President Obama won twice. It's an R+2 district, very flippable district in that sense. But it really comes down to the campaign at the end and what we're able to do and how we're able to build out as strong of an operation as possible, connect with people, get them out to vote. And I am convinced that if we approach this campaign with this mentality that 2018 is the year of no regrets, we're going to give this everything we got, that every single person is going to do everything they can so that when they wake up on November 7th, they can say, I did everything I could. I put it all on the line. We're doing that with this campaign, and we hope people all over the district, all over the region, all over the country, see in us a tangible way that they can make an impact this November to help get our country on a better path. That this is one of the top races, and as I mentioned, what happens on November 6th and who controls Congress could very well come down to who wins this district, and we're going to fight like it depends on it.
Absolutely. We're ready to fight by your side, Andy. So tell us a little bit more about what that looks like. I know that people are fired up listening to you talk, and we are excited to go out and start knocking on doors. You have an event coming up this weekend. I believe it's the 29th. Is that right? Do you want to tell everyone about that and what it looks like to volunteer?
Absolutely. So, anyone in the area, this coming Saturday, we're going to be doing an incredible day of action all across the district. We're going to have multiple staging grounds. We're going to have lots of volunteers going out, knocking doors every single day. In fact, I was just talking with my field team. They were reminding me that we have this wonderful woman named Aloha who's 91 years old and knocking a full packet, and she's going out there over and over again, knocking doors for us, and that's the kind of stuff that reminds us, what we're doing, that this campaign's for everybody here. So we have a lot of these efforts. I urge people to consider joining this coming Saturday. This is incredibly important for us, and that's going to be a big part of what we're trying to be doing. It's going to be this weekend. We're going to be doing some things, but I think actually the biggest day is going to be on Sunday, which is going to be really exciting for us to be able to do. But we'll have that information out on our Facebook page. People can follow us at Andy Kim NJ. Also information on our website, andykimforcongress.com. But it's what it really comes down to is knocking doors and making sure that we're getting out there and getting the word.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for those who don't know, who are watching, Swing Left is a fully coordinated campaign. That means we work carefully with the campaign staff to make sure that we're driving people to those events, getting you prepared, getting you the resources and the tools that you need to get active and stay active. So you can also find all of Andy's events on swingleft.org, and you go to the NJ-03 calendar, and you will see all of the events populated there and can connect with other Swing Left groups to go out and drive to the district and go knock doors together. And also one thing that we didn't mention is the events this weekend, they are marking 100 days out. That's right, isn't it, Andy? That's
right. 100 days out. Not that I'm counting. Not that I'm trying to think through, when I'll be able to sleep in one day. But it's 100 days of giving it everything we got. And it's such an important marker because it helps us focus in and recognize that, we don't have a whole lot of time yet, that this is it. This is the home stretch, and, what's going to happen and, where we go from here as a country is going to depend on these 100 days. No pressure, everyone, but, I'm hoping that we can find a way to be able to work together and do this together. Yeah,
that's right. And we're going to start a countdown clock over here. Then we're going to have to share with everyone pretty soon, because I am definitely counting the days. It is both thrilling and frightening how quickly it comes up. And I think that you shared some really great stories. I love the story about Aloha and then having a 91-year-old out knocking a packet every day. It is really a great anecdote to share how anyone can do this. We can all get out there and make a difference by having conversations with voters. I'm sure you've done some of that yourself. So before we say goodbye to our Facebook audience, I'd love to hear from you. What's been your favorite canvassing campaign story as you've hit the doors and talked to voters on this campaign trail?
Sure. We are running one of the most event-heavy campaigns in the country. So, in addition to the canvassing, I'm out there every day, often doing, 3, 4, 5, often 6 different events every single day. As I said, it's all about connecting in with people and spreading that kind of word. So, I think, meeting people like Aloha has been great. Getting to know this community. This is where I grew up, but I'm able to see it with like a whole nother lens and see a whole nother layer to it. Like, we just recently discovered that there are wild peacocks running around here in Willingboro, New Jersey, as our field team has found out. So people who come and knock doors here in Willingboro with us, you may be able to encounter them. Those are the kind of things that I love. Is just getting to just see my home in another perspective and meet so many people and to engage and see so many young Americans in particular, high school students and college students that are fired up and recognize that, that this is how we get things done. This is how we change things. And to think that my campaign can be a way in which Americans across this district, across this country can try to achieve their vision of change. It gives me incredible honor as a kid who grew up here, did my kindergarten here. It's my favorite moment was certainly watching my mother come out of the voting booth after having pulled the lever for her son running for Congress after everything that she and my father have been through in life. That's what we recognize, that democracy can be beautiful and an amazing thing. But it's only that if we give it everything we got.
Absolutely. It is a powerful experience, and also a pretty great plug to be able to see a peacock during a canvas. I don't know if I've ever seen one of those, although I will say that I grew up in mid-city Los Angeles, and I had a peacock that lived in my backyard. So you never know where you're going to find peacocks.
Okay.
They just pop up everywhere. But you can find all kinds of great things when you're on the campaign canvassing trail. It's a great experience. It's motivating. We encourage everyone to go out and do it. We're going to say a quick goodbye to everyone who joined on Facebook Live. But before we do, I'll say a couple of words, which is that we're such big fans of Andy's. We're really excited to be supporting his race and have this be one of our 78 target races across the country. NJ-03 is flippable. We know we can do this, but we need your help. Go to swingleft.org and take action it's swingleft.org/take-action to get tools and guides and resources to get started. You can also find all of Andy's events on the NJ-03 calendar, especially and including the event that we were just talking about this weekend. And so, again, as we are a fully coordinated campaign, we look forward to working directly with this campaign and their campaign staff. And then finally, before we log off, if you're interested in hearing more from Andy and continuing this conversation, we're going to be here on this webinar for another 10 minutes or so, and we're going to maybe get into a little bit more of a policy chat. So there will be a link on Facebook that you can follow, and you can click and register for the webinar itself to join us and ask questions directly of Andy and continue this conversation. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you on Facebook next time for our next Meet the Candidate session. Have a good afternoon, everyone, and good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, so we are off Facebook. Thanks, Andy. We still have all the folks who are here, and we have some questions coming in. So I'm going to go ahead and start at the top. So we have a question, big topic of the day, especially in light of everything that's going on with Parkland. We have a question that comes in from someone anonymously. Let us know who you are if you're asking questions. Anyway, this question comes in from someone who says that Tom MacArthur has been a big proponent of the concealed carry reciprocity. They want to know what your opinion of CCR is and gun safety in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one of the things that is most on my mind. I was on my way to pick up my 3-year-old from daycare when I heard on the radio about the Parkland shooting. That was a real defining moment for this issue and for our country. And to think that my opponent, Tom MacArthur, he was the only member of Congress in New Jersey to co-sponsor the concealed carry reciprocity bill. And, he did that just in the weeks after the Las Vegas massacre. I just can't believe it. He gets an A rating from the NRA, gets thousands of dollars from them. For me, we need to really approach this in the way that I was saying. For me, I approach this kind of like what I was saying about national security, that this can't be a partisan issue. We can't be thinking about school safety and the safety of our children, the safety of our communities through a partisan lens. And I hope that, we can move forward and have a government that takes us seriously, make sure that we can, first of all, stop concealed carry reciprocity, which is something that's going to make our communities here in New Jersey more dangerous and make the weakest gun laws in the land the law of the land. And, those are things that are very concerning. There's also a bill that's been, they were pushing, Republicans in Congress, including MacArthur, were pushing, that was trying to deregulate silencers and make it easier for people to be able to have access to silencers. These are dangerous things that are happening right now that I want to stop. But I also want to make sure that we can move forward and come up with universal background checks that close the loopholes that we know we need to close for gun shows and private online sales. That we can have the kind of regulations on weapons and other things that are going to allow us to keep our communities safe. And I want to make sure we're focused on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on the nonpartisan question. It's such a strange political climate that we live in, that some of these issues have become so red and blue. And there's another question coming in from Bill that is in that similar vein. I also wonder why this has become a partisan question. But Bill asks, Bill, I will read the question in full. Bill says, our environment is under serious attack, and we are leaving a mess for our children. What will you do to help?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the exact same kind of vein. I mean, for me, climate change is a national security crisis. And as I said, this district is a district that felt that full force, that we were a district that got crushed by Superstorm Sandy. You might remember that, iconic image of the roller coaster in the middle of the ocean. That's Seaside. That's our district. And I think that when we think about what we need to do, it was a very sad day for us as a country when this administration pulled us out of the Paris Climate Agreement. I'm really thankful to states and cities across this country that are saying that does not speak for them, and they are staying up with doing what they can to live up to that agreement. We need a government that gets us back into that agreement and make sure that we are taking the steps that we need to be able to revitalize our energy system, make sure that we're investing in green energy, making sure that we're taking these concerns seriously, especially as a district that's on the shore, making sure that we can stop these threats of offshore drilling and other things that are going to be hurting our community. And that's something that really separates me and is different between me and my opponent, Tom McCarthy.
Yeah. So another question from Bill. I'm going to, again, read it out here. And for those of you who have not submitted a question, just a quick reminder here, please don't submit questions in the chat box. There's lots of threads going on, so we will lose them. If you want to submit a question, put it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You should see a little white box and has a Q on it, and you can click on it and then submit a question directly so that we can answer them. And we'll try to get to as many as we can before we drop off here in a couple minutes. So the next question is also from Bill. It says the Republicans have placed massive spending on tax breaks, have placed massive spending and tax breaks for the wealthy as priorities. How do you think we can reverse this unsustainable trend?
Yeah, I mean, seeing how this tax bill came together, I mean, the fact that my opponent was the only member of Congress in New Jersey to vote yes on this tax bill just shows how out of touch it is in this state and, frankly, with what's happening in this country. When we had 4 other Republican members of Congress in New Jersey vote against it and say this is going to hurt New Jersey families, I think it shows just how extreme my opponent has been on this issue. When they're giving permanent massive tax cuts to the biggest corporations and whereas individuals don't get that kind of permanent relief, that's the kind of stuff that drives people crazy in this district. This is a district that a lot of people here feel left out. They are feeling like they hear about this economic recovery on TV. They see what the stock market's been doing, but they don't feel it at home. They don't feel it in their wallet. And when I see and hear that 40% of Americans wouldn't be able to handle a $400 emergency, these are the types of things that show just how problematic things are in this country, just how bad the inequality is getting, just how bad we see the situation, especially for American workers, and that's why we've been proud of having the support of so many unions and others that recognize that we want to fight for them, give voice to them and the challenges that we have. And that was a big reason why I didn't take corporate PAC money. To promise my district that I'm going to fight on behalf of them, that we're going to just work together to get the job done, and that's how we're going to be fighting back.
Absolutely. So many things to fight this year. It sometimes becomes overwhelming, and I think it's also hard with so many different policy questions to get your message out there and make sure that you communicate what you stand for, especially in the tight time frame of a couple of months, right? So in that vein, we have a question coming in from someone who wants to know how you're thinking about sharing that message as it relates to getting canvassers at the door, but also putting TV ads up and making sure that you're communicating more information about your race to undecided voters.
Yeah, that's right. And, we've been making sure that we are, every single day releasing, more and more information about, the values that we stand for and the issues that we're guided by. I hope people can go to my website and look at the vision page there of the different issues that we're hearing about. There are certainly many, many more issues that we hear about on the trail, but we wanted to let people know some of the core things that we're hearing about. I'd say first and foremost, it's important that we are engaged in a dialogue, that this is about connecting in with people here in this district and understanding what keeps them up at night. That's why I promised that if elected, I'd have an in-person town district every single month. Making sure we are seeing our democracy as a dialogue and seeing something, and revitalizing and reinvigorating what it means to be a representative. But on top of that, coming up with ideas that we are working with the district on. We have a number of different committees and people across this district that are helping us develop, much more detail on how we're going to be able to have solutions that are going to solve some of the problems that we face. And for instance, with prescription drug costs, having a lot of people come together and talking about how we can make sure that Medicare can negotiate drug prices and that we can have a greater price transparency and price justification from pharmaceutical companies. Things that allow us to try to protect consumers, protect people whose lives depend on these types of medication, that we can preserve innovation but ensure fairness into the system. Things like that are going to try to help a lot of people right off the bat. Those are types of issues that we want to engage in and the dialogues that we want to have with people at the door. And, we're having a lot of that with the people that are coming in and knocking doors for us. They're getting, more familiar with what it is that we're trying to do and what we stand for, and showing that contrast with my opponent. I think that's what's really important is being able to show that kind of contrast. And that's what we're excited to be able to do for the next 100 days.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that we talk a lot about door knocking on these calls, and we're big field fans over here. But, that's one of the reasons is people get so bombarded with ads and with blogs and the oppressive media environment that we currently live in, that the best way to break through that is through those face-to-face conversations that we can have with voters at the doors. And
yeah,
the more that we can, yeah.
And what I'll just add there, I remembered, another part of that question, which is, how does this all come together? And I think for us, we are going to have, a lot of TV ads. We're going to have a lot of radio presence, mailers, and other aspects. It's going to be a comprehensive approach, a strategy across the board that fits in with the field operation. Each part playing a different role, targeting a different segment of the district. Coming at it in a way in which we can have the maximum amount of reach and impact. So all of those efforts are going to be necessary. None of them can win this campaign on its own. You cannot win a campaign just through TV ads. You cannot win a campaign just through door knocking. So it requires that kind of comprehensive strategy. Now, what I want people to know is that we have a fantastic campaign team. We've been working together, pulling this out, getting a lot of great input and work along, from the community. We are guided by this strategy. We are running one of the strongest campaigns in the country. We have the resources we need. We, of course, need to continue to press to get more. But I want people to know that, we are certainly going to give this everything we have. And their help and their volunteer work will have a tremendous impact on making sure that we can get this over the top.
Thank you so much, Andy. I know you have to get back to the very busy work of actually running a campaign, and we've kept you a couple minutes over as promised. But I do want to ask one last question, which is really important to me personally. A question that came in from Richard about supporting veterans. He said that your opponent claims to be supportive of veterans, yet he's moved to defund much of the funding for vets. How do you plan to support the vets should you be elected to Congress?
Yeah, this is a critically important issue in our district here. Our largest employer is a joint military base here, McGuire-Dix Lakehurst. We also have over 30,000 active duty that work at that base, tens of thousands of civilians that work at that base, and we have over 50,000 veterans in this district, which is very high, one of the highest in the country. And we want to make sure that we're engaging and supporting our veterans. I mean, look, I served out in Afghanistan as an advisor to the military. I worked alongside our armed servicemen and women, and they saved my life out there. There were a couple instances, one I'm thinking about right now, where our military saved my life. I owe them my life, and I'm going to do everything I can to fight for them. That's what I owe them. That's what we as a nation owe them. And I think we see that up front here in this district. For instance, we have so many veterans, but our health facilities for them are not up to what we need them to be. We have a health facility here in district in Ocean County that doesn't have doesn't really have parking for them, and you have a lot of veterans who are disabled, who have difficulty being able to walk long distances, and just simple things like that can improve their lives and treat them with the amount of dignity that they deserve. Those are things that we want to fight for and make sure that we move forward on, that we can ensure them and guarantee them what it is that we as a nation promised them when they went out and fought on our behalf. So that is an absolute priority for us. As someone who comes from a national security background, I've lived on military bases. These are the things that I'm going to make sure I fight for too.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for sharing so much detail about your policy and your plans. I will try to speak for everyone. I can't, but I will speak for myself and for the Swing Left team and say we are very, very excited to be supporting your race. We are looking forward to your win in November and to having someone like you in Congress. With voices like yours, we're going to be able to put a check on this administration and create change. So we have a lot of work to do before we get there, and you have to get back to that busy work of actually running this campaign. So we're going to let you go, and I'm going to apologize to the few of you who submitted late questions and we were not able to get to them. We have so much to talk about here, and hopefully we will get a chance to get those questions answered in another format. But for now, I will encourage everyone, if you have not yet gone out and supported Andy and his race, please do go to swingleft.org, look up the district, and find ways to get involved. We need your help. And if anyone, I believe because you're on this line, you are not complacent and you understand the importance of this election cycle. But if you're talking to anyone who does not realize this and who feels like this is in the bag and we are going to win back the House in November without the work that is needed to make that happen, remind them how we all felt in November of 2016, because this thing is not over until it's over. We need every single person out there. It is not just enough to vote. We need you to volunteer. We need you to stand up, go talk to voters, and make sure we drive every single person we can to the polls. So with that, I will pass it back to you, Andy, if you want to say any last words, and then we'll say good afternoon and goodbye.
Well, I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined and everyone who's going to get involved, and also just thank you to you and to Swing Left for the incredible work that your organization has done across this country in giving people an outlet, a channel for them to be able to organize. What I always like to say is that this extraordinary energy that we have right now, we see in this office, in this country right now, we just need to make sure that this isn't just about 2018 or 2020, that this just needs to become a new baseline of civic engagement in the country. We fight and never take anything for granted, and we work together going forward and recognizing that the time of making any assumptions about politics is over, that we need to get involved and we need to stay there. And that's what your organization is doing. That's what this campaign is about. All of us working in different angles to be able to come up and fight for a better future. So I deeply appreciate your work.
Well, thank you, Andy. Back at you. I agree with that sentiment more than I can probably express right now. But I know everybody on the line is here because they agree with that as well. So thank you to everybody for joining. Thanks for all the hard work that you've already put into this election cycle and everything that you will continue to do, as Andy said, both from now until November and moving forward. Thanks, Andy, for joining, and good evening, everyone. Look forward to seeing you at the next thing and out of the doors.